This program is brought to you by the following proud sponsors: Paulson Manufacturing, saving the eyes and lives of workers and first responders by manufacturing the highest quality and most reliable safety protective gear in the world. And by the All-Tech Media Group, the region's leading multimedia video production and marketing company, creating powerful and innovative marketing strategies that deliver exponential returns.
You're concerned about revenue growth, but you need to stay competitive, so you reduce your prices, again, shrinking your margin down to nothing. Now what? Well, for starters, you're going to watch our little show here and hopefully take some notes, because Joe Mignone is going to help you uncover some areas where your business might be costing you some money. And these are things that you can definitely fix, to be sure. We're all about lean this week on Manufacturer's Corner. Hello and welcome to Manufacturer's Corner, the program from manufacturers for manufacturers. I'm Jeff Allen. We're all familiar with the importance nowadays of defining a corporate culture for our businesses to help identify who we are, what we're about, what drives us to provide the utmost in quality of not only what we make, but the service we provide to our customers. On this edition of Manufacturer's Corner, we're going to talk about something that can help to contribute to that cultural identity, as well as your company's bottom line, and that's really what it's all about. As part of our ongoing discussion of lean, today we're going to talk about the importance of building a process-centered organization. And joining me once again in studio is Joe Mignone, co-founder of the Institute for Global Business Acumen, an organization which works closely with business owners, executive leadership, and management at all levels to help them identify and reduce waste in their operations, thereby increasing value for their businesses. And Joe, it's nice to have you back on again.
Jeff,
thanks for coming back in.
Thanks for inviting me back.
Now, you're a busy guy too, because you're also in the classroom. So just give us kind of an idea what you do when you go into UCR and some of these other places where you teach.
Well, I teach at several universities, one being UCR and also the University of Redlands. And what I do there is I try to help students understand the need of why their organizations need to focus more on becoming a process-centered organization versus one that's viewed as functional divisions, products, and silos, because at the end of the day, we all have to work together. And working with processes ensures that we're always meeting the customer's satisfaction in the most effective and efficient way, instead of having many other various ways of doing it. So we want to come up with one way all the time to do it the right way.
But Joe, you know, we go to work every day and we have a job to do, and some of us have been working maybe for the same company 25, 30 years, and maybe we're near the end of our run there, but we're always used to going to work and doing things a certain way. We're all aware that there's a process to what it is that we do. So tell me a little bit kind of about what you're talking about, because we're all aware of how we're supposed to do something, aren't we?
I hope so. That's the way business gets done, in the way we do things. Yeah, and that's correct. That's a great statement. The problem is every business doesn't follow all their processes. You know, you may have an organization where you may have 3 shifts and various number of people working on those shifts. And depending on the maturity of the organization, every shift may do the same process a different way. Every person within that shift or on that shift may do it their way as well. So now we have a non-standard way of doing it, which may cause us to have waste, may cause us to have rework, scrap, and therefore we're not producing an effective and efficient product to the customer, and maybe we're not even delivering it on time because we have to start all over. So it really has an impact on the bottom line of a business by not having processes in place. So every organization, no matter what type of organization you have, even if you have a restaurant, just imagine if you weren't following the same recipe. People come because you're providing them with some type of value. Those values could be the type of food, the flavor of the food. But if you have different cooks cooking it, or you have one person adding a little bit of this and a little bit of that ingredient over and above, it's going to have an impact on the outcome of that product.
It's going to be different. It'll taste different. And then, too, on top of that, you've got the people. Maybe people go for the service.
Exactly.
There's someone there that they've known for years and years. They come in and take good care of them and so forth. So really, we're talking about something, a process-centered organization. I mean, obviously, Manufacturers Corner, we're really kind of trying to appeal to the folks that run the manufacturing businesses. But this is something really, at the end of the day, that can apply to all different kinds of companies in all industries.
Right. Well, it also applies to pharmaceutical companies or people who make any type of product where a recipe is included. If you define what that recipe is, especially if you're making medicines, I know there's FDA constraints and regulations, but sometimes we just don't do it right for whatever reason it may be at that time. So we always have to ensure, leadership needs to ensure that organizations follow these, because they do run into scrap. You don't hear about it. They don't want people to know about it, but they do run into producing scrap that then is waste into the bottom line, and they have to start all over with that particular compound that they do. And in the manufacturing sector, it's tremendously burdensome on an organization when you do that, because you could miss a delivery schedule for a customer. And that customer could be one of your main customers that provides maybe 60% of your revenue. So you don't want to miss it. So at the end of the day, you're always looking at consistency for effective and efficient methodologies of doing things. And that's one of the things in being a world-class organization. An organization that has processes in place, everybody's following the processes, it guarantees the outcome, and then you become the benchmark of the industry. People will come to you and want to know how you do it and what you're doing, because you know that you can count on your product at all times.
And when you've got the entire team kind of reading off the same sheet of music, and everyone's towing the line and doing the same things, and everybody's following those processes, it makes for a better work environment really overall, because there's an understanding amongst the team, amongst the people, what each other's respective jobs are responsibilities are, how things work and how the flow works. You brought some supportive media here that we're going to be able to use, the PowerPoint presentation. Let's start by talking about this just a little bit here, Joe, and kind of get into the nitty-gritty. We're interested in providing, you talked about value, and the one thing we want to make sure that we do is that the people watching today here on Manufacturers Corner are going to get something out of this, so that you can go back and you'll have something to talk to about this with your team as well. So first up, components of an effective process-centered organization.
Yeah, I like to spend some time. There's three main components. This is all has to do with lean, if you want to say it that way. Lean is the process of becoming more effective and efficient at the end of the day in your business. It all starts with processes. Your processes need to be documented. If they're not documented, then we have variation. Variation is, then we talk about, has part to do with reducing variation as part of Six Sigma, reducing variation. 3.4 defects per million, that's what variation should be. So if you don't have documented processes to begin with, I think an organization needs to spend the time to do that. Because at the end of the day, again, as I said, it's going to provide effective and efficient methods within your organization. There's the ISO standard that businesses have to deal with. ISO is coming out with a new revision now, the 2015 edition. And within the next 2 months, it's going to have to do, again, with customer satisfaction, improving processes as well. And then you have the other area of just I call it management by walking around to reduce waste. Just take a look at your own facility and where are you wasting. Part of that is value stream mapping. Do we have a spaghetti chart? Do we move product all over the facility, or is it a smooth flow? So the process should be changed, and maybe machines be moved to incorporate a smooth flow of material throughout the facility. And that would also help reduce waste and cost, as we talked about in one of the earlier presentations on where are the various waste within an organization. And then we always looking at the third one is has to do with continuous improvement, whereby, again, once you do have a process, you need to go back to make sure that that process is still a valid process, because technology changes, people's skill sets change, there's different levels of what needs to be done within an organization that will have an impact on a process that needs to be done. And I think the cornerstone of the whole thing is having some type of process audit to ensure that everyone is using that process. Because we have a tendency to go back to the old way all the time. And it's very difficult for some organizations, as you alluded to in the beginning. Sometimes we have people who are there for a while within an organization, and they've been doing things that way for a long time. And if you come in with a new way and you get them involved in coming up with a new way of doing things, sometimes we're reluctant to do it because we may not be comfortable in that. Because we have to learn the new way. Mm-hmm. So we may have a reluctance and fall back to the old way of doing things. But we as a business, we always have to help people understand that there's always better ways, maybe, and with technology and everything else that's involved in it. So you want to do audits of your processes to make sure that everybody's following them. And once you do that, then you could start the cycle all over again.
A good example of that, Detroit, which had fallen behind Germany and Japan in terms of car sales and being able to give customers, drivers, what it is that they wanted to drive. Mm-hmm. And so it seemed like it was working when they were doing SUVs during the 90s, and things were it was going crazy. But we found out as we got into the 2000s and the 21st century, people were buying fewer SUVs. But it wasn't just the products that were the problem. It was the way that Detroit was doing things, designing and engineering their vehicles 5-10 years ahead of time and not rolling them out. And those were the really great looking cars that we saw at the car shows, but they were never made available to the public. Right. And so there was kind of being out of touch. So there are so many different facets then, Joe, from what you're saying, involved in a business, from research with your customers, the way things are done internally, manufacturing processes, and a number of different things that really fall into this.
Right. So as you mentioned, within the business, there's different ways. We could even take a look at it in finance. The process of how we pay our bills today. Do we still issue checks, or do we use electronic transfers?
Direct deposit, sure.
Writing a check, it takes a lot of time to do, and not only that, then the accounting department has to do bank reconciliations, and then if the checks don't clear, then we have to put the money with the state, and there's a lot of follow-up, and all that adds no value. Mm-hmm. If we work with bank transfers, we don't have to reconcile the checkbooks anymore. We know exactly the check hits, is deducted from the account. We don't have to sheet the checks back to the state. So we could save a lot of paperwork. And then we don't have to store all the paperwork that we do. So there's a lot of hidden cost, if you want to say that non-value cost there that's associated with different processes. Issuing purchase orders. So what we talk about with processes deals with the whole entire organization, not just within a manufacturing segment of the organization. In designing it, we talk also a little bit. Just in time was another way to reduce inventory. How do we do that? But we're not talking about minutes anymore. We're talking about seconds. How can we make sure that we get it within the seconds that we need it because of the inventory? And then we also talk about in castings used in manufacturing. Years ago, or even probably today, some organizations, and I have seen it, they buy a big hunk of steel for whatever reason, and they just chip it away on a milling machine, and then they take those chips and they sell them. But if they could work a little closer with the supplier of the milling machine, maybe they could buy the rod or whatever they use at a lesser diameter, so that would take less chips. Less chips is less energy, less time, and we can make it at a less cost to the customer. So everything has an opportunity to take a look at. of how we should do things to improve the process. Processes all over, everything, you know, in project management even, in the area, there's processes involved in project management. A lot of companies, they talk about project management, but they really don't stick to a process. I'll give you an example. You know, I call it a systematic approach to project management, where if you have several project managers in an organization, and each project manager manages their project differently, or even to the extent of the way they file the documents, purchase orders, estimates, whatever that may be. If the company doesn't have a routine or a set methodology to do that electronically, or even if it's a manual system, if one project manager is out sick and somebody has to fill in for them, where do I look? Because in project management, time is money. You know, the project has to get done on a certain day and the clock is ticking, and we have other suppliers maybe, you know, to follow up with to get things done. And so people don't realize it until it's too late sometimes, the need for the project a process-centered organization.
There's a lot of moving parts,
There's
and there are a
a
lot of people involved in those moving parts, and so
Right.
it's hard to necessarily keep track of everybody. That's why if you've got an effective process in place, you don't have to worry so much. Things are getting done. Everybody is running on the riding on the same bus. So we've talked about the components of the effective process:
Right.
documentation of processes,
Right.
continuous improvement, and process audits.
But the other thing too, it also serves as a learning tool, because then we could teach new employees. You know, there's a couple ways. You know, you normally have a mentor and a coach for a new employee who comes in. Instead of learning by tribal knowledge, he's actually learning how, or he or she is actually learning how that job should be performed. Because if you tell somebody, you don't, if your person has to train them, sometimes you do it so often, repetitively, you do it in your sleep, and you do it subconsciously. And you may not even think about telling the person, oh, don't forget to do this. But if it's all documented in a process, it's right there. You know, a process could be as simple as a check sheet. Do we have this? Do we have this? Do we have that? And maybe start with a check sheet. So people think by having processes, it's too controlling. But at the end of the day, you want to make sure that pill that you take is the right pill.
You talked about here process audits for compliance and improvement. Is that something that can be done internally, or is that really something that a business owner should really look and invest in having someone from outside, third party coming in?
There's two ways of doing it. You know, there's ISO, who ensures that if you are ISO certified, that in order to maintain that certification, you have to have a third party inspector come in, inspection agency to come in and validate that all the time. But it should start with an internal audit function within your organization, and maybe this would be a good topic for a future program that we could talk about. But you should train people within your own organization, because what happens then when you train people in your own organization, they have a complete view of something. So something that may happen in one department may have a bearing on a prior department. So they could then go see what the effect could be on another department and when that should be changed in that. So they see a whole complete process themselves. So normally it would be good, and a lot of companies do have internal audits themselves. And if you are ISO certified, one of the key elements in ISO certification is have internal audits being done. Not only that, those companies who are associated with Sarbanes-Oxley, which is one that maintains internal processes other than those used in manufacturing. It could be like revenue recognition, purchase orders, and things like that, and in another environment. Those processes are conducted again by outside auditors, and they're normally publicly held companies that go through that. But having an internal organization doing it, if you have the internal organization doing it and everything is fine the way it should be, the ultimate result is then the external auditor who you pay spends less time there, therefore enables you to reduce that cost through that external auditor.
And the new terminology that is really come into vogue the last 5-10 years, best practices, really kind of...
Best practices, right. So this leads into best practices now. So now you got the best process. So you could even, you as an organization should go out and benchmark. You don't need to benchmark your own industry. What you're actually going to go is benchmark a particular process that's being performed, whether it's inventory, whether it's the way you do cycle counts, whatever that process may be. Who does it the best, whether in your industry or outside your industry? And what you want to try to do is emulate that process within your own organization to change it. And hopefully the key here is being the best process and to have the best practices. You become a world-class organization, and now you're looked upon as the best practice, and companies come to you to see what you're doing. So it starts with leadership. You know? Leadership needs to be committed to this. They have to understand the results of not being effective and efficient within the organization, the hidden cost that's associated with that. And once they realize that, then they have to try to educate the whole entire workforce as to why we need to do this. So it's not a flavor of the month. It's a change in the culture of the organization.
You have an interesting quote here
that
you cite. It's from Phil Crosby. People are a reflection of the organization's management.
Right.
Leadership at all levels do not support a process-centered organization. The rest of the organization will reflect the same approach.
Exactly. I mean, if it doesn't start at the top, we know that from experience. You know, some organizations are good enough where they started from the bottom, but you also have to let the people know why we need to do that. What's the impact? And the other part is you have, because you're talking about change here, you have to let people know what's in it for me. You know, maybe my job is a lot easier. Maybe I become more satisfied with what I'm doing because now I'm not putting out fires every day. Maybe because I'm learning something new. You know, managers spend a lot of time, they don't admit to it, but in some organizations, managers spend a lot of time putting out fires.
Joe, you've met with so many businesses and doing what you do in consulting with manufacturers and other businesses. Have you found that people, the workers on the factory floor, in the office, wherever they are, they want to be part of the process, they want to be part of the change? Right. Yeah. Well, even if they maybe they're not particularly happy doing what they're doing right now, but do they want to be looked at as someone who can be integral in terms of making those changes? And
what I find sometimes is it's so difficult in some organizations because of the bureaucracy to change the process itself that the workers just take it upon themselves and change the process to make it easier. So you have it both sides because they want to make their life easier too. Because sometimes in an organization, a worker is challenged by getting a production out, you know, meeting a production quota or a schedule. And maybe the process hinders them from meeting that. So they're going to change that process so they do it because that's what they get, you know, paid on or whatever. Somebody who does piecework, they're getting paid by quantity, so they're going to come up with the best methodology to do whatever they do to get the quantity out to do that. But when you start looking at changing the processes, you know, and continuously improving the processes, what you should do is make sure that you have the people there who actually do the process. So to your point, it's the people themselves who perform it, the workers. They know best how to do the process. You just got to stop and ask them to do it. They're willing to change because of the fact that they do it. But then again, you have the other group who, it's okay. You know, they'll just go along with what has to be done. And sometimes they're the organization that becomes very complacent. And at the end of the day, well, the day maybe a few years, they're going to be out of business because they're not keeping up with the changes that need to be done in the continuous process of improving what they need to do. Again, you got to meet the customer satisfaction. You got to provide them the quality. You got to provide them the value that they want. And if you don't meet that, they have choices today.
It's a lot of responsibility, but it's something that all business owners have to, go to sleep at night with on their mind, and then wake up with that same thought in the morning. And because once you make someone who's been your loyal customer for 25 years unhappy, and they're not likely for whatever reason to give you a second chance, you've lost a customer for life, and it's very difficult to get people like that back.
Very difficult to get it. So, sometimes you have to make a big commitment up front. You have to be in this for the long term. You can't be in here for 30 days and say things are going to change. You have to educate the employees, let them know what you're trying to accomplish by doing this. It takes time to do that. This is the change process, and we spoke about this before. The only one that really likes change is a wet baby. Everybody else is going to procrastinate a little bit. But you have to keep grinding at the wheel, and eventually you will have a world-class organization, no matter how big or how small. And people are going to come to you to say, how do you do it? Show us what you do to do it. And that's when you become a real proud organization. Your name, you don't even need to advertise anymore. They know who you are.
And, as an extension just of your mentioning the leadership's responsibilities, it all starts with the top. You talk about implementing a process system which identifies all core and supporting processes. This is the leadership's responsibility, ensures the availability of resources to support the system, and ensures processes are monitored, measured, and analyzed for continuous improvement to meet the performance objectives of the organization for both external and internal customer needs and any required statutory and legislative requirements. So, a business owner, general manager, facilities manager, operations, they've got this huge job and responsibility just to go to work every day and make sure that everybody reports on time, everybody's doing the job, and on top of this, they have to do this.
Right, it's regulatory requirements. Yeah. There's, as I said, there's ISO, there's the Food and Drug Administration, there's maybe OSHA requirements. There's all kinds of requirements out there that organizations have to work to. There's the Sarbanes-Oxley requirements. There's in the financial area, and there's financial requirements that need to be done. And it's all about doing it right. It's about getting it right the first time. If you don't get it right the first time, in business, it's going to cost you more money to do it over. And what happens is people don't know what that true cost of doing it over is.
Yeah.
Until they realize what they're spending, which could be an income, right, instead of an expense to their business, and they stop and figure out what's the true cost of my product and what am I selling it for? Am I really making money? How can I make more money? It's about, why is a company in business? To make money. I haven't seen one yet who's in business just to give it away and lose money continuously.
Or just to have fun, Right. We've only got about 5 minutes left here, Joe, so what I'd like to do is kind of recap just a little bit. This is process-centered organizations. I mean, it could take years for a company to establish a certain way of doing things, but there's always ways to improve. And so they embark on a program like this. It's not something that happens overnight. We know that it takes a long time to get things right. So once people have this established framework for this new process-centered organization in place, and everybody's working toward the same goal, what are the advantages? What are the end benefits that a company can see once they've started making these improvements, and there are real changes that have started taking place?
Well, if you take a look at the bottom line here, it provides an overview of value-added supported activities. Everything is value-added. Yes, we do activities that maybe do not add value in the eyes of the customer, such as payroll, or other internal processes that we need to do within various departments. It also it clarifies organizational responsibilities, because now we have processes, we know exactly who's responsible. You go to some organizations and there's no processes. There's always finger pointing. Why did this happen? Everybody points the finger to somebody else. But if we have processes, we identify an owner to those processes. And if the process is broken or needs repair or needs to be improved, we know who to go to in the organization, and we sit down and figure out what the process needs to be done because of technology and everything else. And then it provides a good foundation to analyze where can we go next with the process. You know, it's a journey. It's not a destination. There's new technology coming out all the time. Are we applying the right technology? Is there something new that we should be using to help us improve? You know, nobody uses a drill press anymore per se. You know, that's why people are being replaced who used to be drill press operators. We have machinery that do all that, you know, robotics, automatic machines that do all that. So we have to improve that process because it brings down the cost of the product. The customers are interested in the cost and quality. Improved processes, there's no guarantee it's going to improve the cost, but it's going to improve to know that the product is going to be the same all the time. The output is going to always be the same. And then it also provides an understanding of learning within the organization. So if you do have 3 shifts, 9 people, whatever that may be, everybody does it the same way, and then you could interface people. And again, as I said, if someone is out sick, somebody could fill in, and the machinery doesn't need to stop. Somebody will know how to do it. And lastly, it enables you to focus on the task of identifying performance indicators. You know, how is our performance on these? So we always measure how well the processes are performing. If they're not performing well, then we go back and improve them. So there's many different things that, being a process-centered organization, many benefits from it. The key is we have to first make the decision we want to go do that.
Joe, if someone wants to talk to you more about this this idea, this concept of a process-centered approach, and maybe talk to you about coming in and observing their organization, their operation, how they do things, what should they do?
Well, they should just contact us on our website, you know, the Global Institute of Business acronym, and just type in information, www, and then we'll be more than happy to get in touch with them, or they can contact us through you too.
Okay, and this is, once again, I think a really, really important program that we featured on here to hopefully kind of create some conversations on the part of our audience and get people thinking about ways that they can improve their processes in their organization. So many advantages and benefits. And John, I want to thank you so much for coming on board.
Jeff, thank you. I hope we helped somebody today.
I think we probably have. And that's it for this edition of Manufacturer's Corner. Thanks again to my guest, Joe Mignone of the Institute for Global Business Acumen, for joining us today. If you're a manufacturer, policymaker, or educator, and you would like to take part in our discussions as a guest or member of a future panel discussion, please complete our contact form on the contact page at manufacturerscorner.com, or you can call us at 951-697-3098. And I'll repeat that number because that's the number you can call for sponsoring our program as well. Advertisers, you're welcome. We'd love to hear from you, so please give us a call there. And also, make sure that you visit the contact page. You can submit your query there. It's really easy to find, manufacturers.com. Again, the number 951-697-3098. And we'll make sure that we get back to you. We'll also include you in your email list as well so that you can receive updates about Manufacturer's Corner and California CEO. For Manufacturer's Corner, I'm Jeff Allen. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you again.
This program was brought to you by the following proud sponsors: Paulson Manufacturing, saving the eyes and lives of workers and first responders by manufacturing the highest quality and most reliable safety protective gear in the world. And by the All-Tech Media Group, the region's leading multimedia video production and marketing company, creating powerful and innovative marketing strategies that deliver exponential returns.